It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Let's talk about 30-year-olds.
Okay.
30-year-olds, here's the thing I think about it. 20, you're just figuring out how the world works. But in your 30s, you're building wisdom. I mean, the world's starting to make a little more sense to you. You're managing chaos. I get it, Bo. You get it. I mean, I figure you're going to blow it off here in a minute and tell everybody, let them see a little behind the curtain of the Hanson household, is that this is chaos. And I've had so many pick-me-up talks with you that I'm telling you, Bo, it's okay. It's supposed to be chaotic at this age in your life, so don't worry about it. Everybody else is going through this too. We have to do this to populate the earth.
Yeah,
so it's okay. Keep going.
You keep telling me that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I keep telling you about the alligator pits and the razor blades and arrows that are happening in the tunnel.
It's chaotic in your 30s. I fully give that. But this is also your last stop on the train of maximizing your wealth multiplier. When you can let the compounding interest of your money and your army of dollar bills working for you, it's still going to be great in your 40s. It's still going to be good in your 50s, but it is outstanding in your 20s and 30s. It really is that rocket fuel moment. So this is the last stop on that understanding. So let's kind of jump into this.
So if you think about savings rate, we already said that the overall savings rate in this country, according to the Fidelity study in 2016, is 8.5%. And we've already said that millennials, age 25 to 34, save on average 7.5%. So to get to the average, we'd have to assume that the ones in their 30s would have to be saving more. So how much more is it? Well, it's 8.2%. It's still below the average, and we're still nowhere near the 15 to 20% that you want to be saving. But if you just listen to what we said about the 20-year-olds, if you start early, it's amazing what even lower savings rates can do for you if you give yourself time. And that same thing is true in your 30s.
Yeah, a little goes a long way. I think it's worth repeating. So let's talk about in your 30s. What do you need to be thinking about? Because there's a lot going on. This is the part where I think you're trying to figure out, is where I'm at on a daily basis, is this a job job, or is this truly a career I see myself progressing and growing into?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Brian, because I've got friends who are in their 30s who said, you know what, this thing I've been doing, I don't want to do anymore. I'm going to shift. And they're able to do that, and it's wonderful. It works out, and they find fulfillment, and they're able to make that change. And I have other friends who I've seen who try to do that same thing in their 40s and 50s, and it's just not the same.
Yeah.
This is the decade where if you are going to make a big life change in your 30s, you still have 20, 25, 30 working years left. So you have a lot of time to build in that 10,000 hours of experience, that time to go find something that's fulfilling.
Yep.
As life gets more complicated, as the kids get older, or as all the things pulling on you get more and more severe, it's harder and harder to do that. So you want to make sure you have it right in this stage.
Well, it's also a risk capacity thing. I think because that's kind of the thing you're brushing up against, is that in your 20s and 30s, if you completely fail, it's okay because you have time to recover. Making big changes, especially in your career path and taking a move sideways or even a step down, gets much harder when you've bought the farm in your 40s and 50s. There's just too many things going on. So that's why I will tell you, focus on, is it a job or a career while you're in 30s? Use that wisdom that you built up in your 20s to try to figure out if you're an expert at something, how do we now try to maximize that potential? Let's move on to the chaos, the family. But this is the part, this is what I tell you. And this is kind of, I feel like we're opening the curtain, letting everybody see our conversations. This is not supposed to be easy at this stage of life. Because let me just tell you, and you have to tell me if this resembles your life. We are hardwired. First of all, I think it's worthwhile to know. We as humans, this is how we continue to populate the earth. We are hardwired that our memories actually get better the older we get on experiences where the ugly stuff falls off.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
The ugly stuff I'm talking about is that when you have kids, first, you're changing poopy diapers.
Change a lot of very poopy diapers.
You have a lot of sleepless nights.
I do not sleep a whole lot.
And that leads to exhaustion. Because you just never know. If there was there's so many things that happen while you're in the family years, that if there was a choose your own adventure, it would be this thick.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be like your normal choose your own adventure. It's just because you never know. Every night you lay your head down, you're just hoping that you wake up in the morning and something didn't fall apart at night.
That's exactly right. That's 100% true. And I think what's so amazing, Brian, is that I think you said it exactly. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's supposed to be hard. My natural, this is sort of confessional, my natural bent is I want to be a fixer. I want things to be perfect and better. And for those of you that have kids, you just understand it doesn't work that way. You cannot fix that situation. But the things that you're doing in your 30s, the things that you're doing with your kids, the time you're spending, the hard stuff you're putting in matters and has a very lasting impact. So that's not something, at least for me, that I can lose sight on. And so I love thinking about, you said what to focus on. Don't focus on the hardness of it. Focus on the importance of it and the necessity of it for what you're going through.
But it is. I think it's important other people to know there are struggles out there.
Yeah, for sure.
This too will pass, so it will be okay. But this is something that leads to the next thing is lifestyle creep.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Now, Bo, I'm looking tell me, is this something that you see people, because remember, you have just enough wisdom. You're also starting to make some inroads in your career to where income is starting to look a lot better than it did when you're 22, 23 years old, getting that first job. What does lifestyle creep look like for a 30-year-old?
It's one of those things where you close your eyes and then you open them and then you just notice that it happened, right? Like in your 20s and your 30s, okay, there's making egregious bad decisions like, oh, I don't need to go buy that new fancy car. I really can't afford it. But then in your 30s, it's, okay, maybe I can afford that. Maybe that is something. But what's the trade-off? If I do go buy the big house, if I do go buy the nice car, what am I sacrificing to be able to do that? And you have to answer that question for yourself. Am I sacrificing something that my 40, 50, 6-year-old self is really going to wish that I had? Or is it okay? Am I following all the appropriate rules? Am I keeping my housing below 25%? Am I doing the 23.8 with my car? Am I making solid financial decisions even if my lifestyle is increasing? Or is my lifestyle creep increasing more than my savings rate? Because if that's the case, you have to take a pause and say, what am I doing? I am robbing from my future self.
Well, let's talk. I want to go a little deeper in that. I want to talk about what is it, because the biggest thing that I think is fundamental with wealth creation is deferred gratification or living below your means. Because that's really when somebody says live below your means, they're really talking about taking a little bit of today so you can have an awesome tomorrow. It's that whole concept of deferred gratification. Well, and we talked about this for the 20-year-olds, but we got to come back and play a little review. The average new car loan, I think this is a thing, we didn't even make this differentiation in the 20s, is $37,185 as of May 2019. Daniel came and told me an interesting stat, which is why we're going to do even more content on this in the coming. I will go ahead and put a teaser out there. Approximately $5,000 of that $37,000 is not for the new car. It is the negative equity that people have because they're underwater in their current car, that when they go buy a new car, they don't even pay off the old one. They just roll the negative equity into the new car loan.
That is so much worse. How'd you bury that lead for me?
So that's what I mean.
So folks actually buy a $32,000 car but take out a $37,000 loan to pay for it?
So it has a lot to do with we have stretched out how long people can pay for stuff. We're focusing on the car payments versus how much we actually owe on the car and what the car is worth. We're upside down, and it's because the market created this. And this is why I think it's worth repeating. 23.8 works, guys. 20% down, amortize over the next 3 years, and then make sure that your car payment is not greater than 8% of your gross income. This is what's going to keep you. And if you apply it to those average numbers, we told you somebody who's in their 30s, you're probably at an average income, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, around $54,000 a year. That means your car purchase should probably be around $15,500.
That's right.
Not $37,000 because you rolled your old car that's now not worth anything, but you still owe money on into the old car loan.
How about this for a little bit of cold water? We took the number $37,185 and we reverse engineered it backwards to figure out what income would it require to be able to afford a car like that. If you're going to buy a $37,185 car, your household income needs to be $130,000 a year to make it fall into that realm of responsible decision making.
So be very careful with understanding that. But I think let's put some data, because we are so nerdy that we went and researched. Daniel did. He found this stat for us on how many people are actually even focusing on how much they spend. Do they understand this concept of deferred gratification? What did we find, Bo?
Yeah, I'm going to say by and large, the answer is absolutely not. Look at this. 36% of Americans, now this is according to the 2018 National Financial Capability Study, 36% of Americans spend their entire paycheck every month.
Gone.
They are just living month to month paying for it.
That's paycheck to paycheck.
But wait, it gets worse. 19% spend more than they make. So 19% of respondents are actually incurring debt on a month-over-month basis. 4% refuse to answer or don't know. I'm going to go on a limb and suggest that if you refuse to answer, don't know, you're probably not on the good side of this
Yeah.
camp. And so what that tells us is that only 41% of folks actually live below their means.
So 10 people on the street, 6 of them are doing money wrong on their monthly budget, and only 4% are actually doing the concept of deferred gratification. And as we've seen from the national averages of savings rates, we're still not anywhere near 20 to 25%.
Right.
And that leads me to the thing that I think this is the tough love moment. And I'm serious with you guys. I gave the 20-year-olds a break because I get it. When you're first out of college, it's hard to tell somebody who's making $40,000 a year right out of college, you need to be saving 20, 25%. Because I know there's a lot of things pulling at your back pocket. You got to have time for that habit to develop and kind of evolve into the 20, 25%. Because there's probably a runway that you started off at 7%, even counting the employer match, but then it went to 10, 15, got up to 20 with pay raises. If you're in your 30s and you're not saving 20 to 25%, guys, you got to get there as fast as possible. That is the tough love moment because listen to this. Let's do the numbers to build perspective to kind of show them why it's so important that they need to be saving money.
So again, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we wanted to go look at the average income in this country for a 30-year-old as well as a 35-year-old. And we found that the average income for a 30-year-old is $45,000 a year. Average income for a 35-year-old is $54,000 a year. Well, if you want to be a millionaire and you wait until either 30 or 35 to start saving, for the 30-year-old, you have to save $270 per month to get to $1 million. For the 35-year-old, you have to save $452 per month. Well, if you look at that in percentage terms, for a 30-year-old, you have to be saving 7.2% to get to $1 million by the time you get to 65. Again, good news, on average, 30-year-olds are saving 8.2. So again, a little goes a long way. And then if you wait till 35, the number goes from 7.2 up to 10%. You have to be saving 10% of that $54,000 income to get to $1 million by age 65.
So here's the things, there's several things to take from this. First of all, we use, for a 30-year-old, we use 9% rate of return because we know that you're not getting what the 20-year-old's getting with the 10%. And then for a 35-year-old, we even brought it down to 8.5% because the older you get, the more risk you have to kind of dial down and you're going to add more diversification to your portfolio. So you can see, to be a millionaire, 7.2% of your savings based upon average incomes for a 30-year-old, 10% for 35. But $1 million is not going to be the same for a person who's 30 or 35 years old. So let's take into account the $3 million. Because when we were talking to Sarah, the next millionaire next door, she had kind of mentioned that inflation adjusted, $3 million is kind of now the ding, ding, ding number
mark,
that people are really, if you want to be, we did a FIRE episode recently, $3 million is kind of a big threshold where you're living a really good life. So what do you need to be saving as a 30-year-old? It's 21.6%.
That comes out to $811 per month. That's some pretty serious Chad. And then for the 35-year-old, it actually goes up to $1,356 per month.
Or 30.1% of their income of $54,000. So that's why when you hear us talking about you got to be saving 20 to 25%, it's amazing to me, Bo. We've been doing that stat for years. But when we actually put the data to it, you're like, it's amazing. I mean, this is exactly how this all lines up. So pay attention to that stuff. You can be a millionaire even making modest incomes in your 20s, in your 30s. You do not have to be making six figures to be a millionaire, but you better make sure your behavior reflects the habits that are actually creating wealth.
Absolutely.